recurring decimals. Today we're going to be looking at how to write recurring decimals, how to use the notation to work out what recurring decimals are, and then finally we're going to have a look at some common recurring decimals that you might see in either questions or in everyday life. Now, what does recurring mean? Well, recurring means it repeats itself. Recurring means it repeats itself. Recurring means it repeats itself. Okay, right, enough of that. Okay, supposing I've got 0.7777. Supposing I've got 0.7777 and so on. You can see that the 7 is just going to go on and on and on and on. So what we do is we write it as 0.7 with a single dot above it, and that indicates that the 7 will just keep going, keep going, keep going. So 0.7 with a single dot on it would depict that. The same way, let's have a look at this one now. We've got 0.7373. So the 7 isn't repeating itself, but the 7 and the 3 are, and then they start again. So that's recurring. So the pattern of that number is going to be 0.7373, and the dots there means it keeps going, 7373, and so on. So we would write it as 0.73 with a dot over both. Now, the first dot means where the a repeated pattern or the recurring pattern starts, and the second dot indicates where it finishes. So it starts at 7, finishes at 3. Then it's going to start at 7, finish at 3, and so on. Slightly different is this one, because if I've got 0.711111 and so on, as you can see, it's the ones that are carrying on. So the way I would write it would be, I'd write it as 0.71, but I'd just put the single dot over the 1, because the 7, once you've just had that 1 7, nothing else is happening. It's the ones that carry on. Okay? Let's have a look at one final one before we start to do things the other way around. We've got 0.0307. So 0.0. Now, where's the repeating pattern going on here? It's here, 307, 307. So that 0 there isn't part of the repeating pattern. So we go 307 here, and we put a dot above the 3 because that's the start of the repeating pattern. And we put a dot above the 7 because that's the end of the repeating pattern. And it will go on and on and on and on. One thing we've forgotten to write on here is obviously the dots here in our question, which indicates that this pattern just keeps on going. Okay, going the other way round. I've been given a recurring decimal with its notation. So I've got 0.6 and the single dot is above the 6. That's going to be 0.66, and then you can just keep, it's the 6 is just going to keep going on. So you could just finish it off with your dots there. 0.32, a dot above the 3 and a dot above the 2. That's going to be 0.323232, and so on, dot, 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 dot. Okay? Now 0.3, the difference here between these two is you've only got a dot above the 2 this time. So that's going to be 0.3222, and it's just the 2's that will carry on, indicated by the single dot. Very similar. Let's now look at this one here. So we've got 0.322, and the dot is, I've got one dot above the 3 and one above the 2. So it's going to be 0.322, 322, 322, and so on. It's the 322 bit that's repeating itself. So that's indicated by the start and the end of the dot there. And this final one here, we've got 0.3, just a single dot above the 2. So it's 0.3, and it's just indicating the 2's just going to repeat itself there. 2, 2, and then so on there. And that's just indicating that 2 is just going to carry on there. In fact, you might not even need to have that second 2 in there to demonstrate it there, so you could get away with just writing it like that. It's the the same thing as that actually, isn't it? Okay, right, let's have a look at just a couple of common recurring decimals that you might see in real life. If a question asks you to say what is a third of the recurring decimal, well, a third is actually 0.3 recurring. So you could write a third like that. It's 0.333 and so on. Two thirds, if you ever see the two thirds, it's 66 and 2/3 of a percent, in the same way that a third is 33 and a third of a percent. And that is, you could write it as 0.6 with a dot above it, or you could write it as 0.666 and so on like that. A sixth, we won't go into percentage on that because we rarely use a percentage, but the recurring decimals that you might see a 0.16 with a single dot, which means a 6 will just carry on. A ninths are quite interesting. That's just 0.1 with a single dot in it. 0.1111111, okay? And then 2 ninths is 0.2 with a single dot on it. So in the same way, all the ninths are actually the same number as the top of the fraction. And the only other thing on that is if you have a look at this one here, this 777, 0.7, that will be the same in the same way as 7 ninths using that logic there. So there we have it. We've got recurring decimals, how to write them, how to work out what they are, and a few common examples you might see in everyday life. In everyday life. In everyday life.